doesn't look like money is the only fix.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Taco Comfort Solutions.
Great to have you aboard. Yeah, it's impeachment week. If you are seeing this show on its original air date, which is December 16th, you may see this once or twice over the next couple of weeks, meaning in the holidays. You know, we got to take a little break. You know, producers, directors complain that I work them too hard, you know, so we need to, and there's this thing called the Christmas season. Welcome in. Nice to have you, and thank you very much for tuning in to my State of Mind. So I'm going to forego any kind of details tonight on the news issues. Yeah, there's Jim Comey's television visit on Fox. There's Chuck Schumer looking for witnesses and maybe extending the impeachment hearings in the Senate out to more than a month. There's the vote that'll happen on the House floor on Wednesday. We'll get to that stuff. And by the way, tomorrow night we'll take a look at what's happening in Warwick with a firefighter deal, which is pretty provocative, no doubt. But in the meantime, there's been a lot of education coverage going on, and old friend Dan McGowan, who works for the Boston Globe Online now, I'm not even going to tell you where he used to work. There was a 6-month moratorium on that, and that's it. But the Boston Globe Online is obviously a very hot commodity right now when it comes to news. And Dan is covering the city of Providence and education issues as well or better than anybody else in the community. And he's here again tonight to kind of talk about some of the latest, which is an audit that was done in the city of Providence schools. And reportedly it shows that maybe it's the way they spend the money as opposed to the total amount of money necessary. Here's Anita Buffoni's headline and her story on Eyewitness News last week.
Education Commissioner Angelica Infante Green says the Providence school budget is in better shape than she expected. The new financial analysis says there is not as large of a deficit as the city thought, but she says much of the report is still troubling.
Our investments do not match our priorities, and that is a real big problem for us.
The independent financial analysis conducted by accounting firm Ernst & Young found the school department's budget could be overpaying for custodial and transportation services and underfunding English language learning.
We have allowed the status quo to keep us where we are.
President of the Providence Teachers Union, Mary Beth Calabro, agrees more ESL teachers are desperately needed, hoping the state will offer monetary incentives to offset certification costs.
We are woefully understaffed and woefully unprepared to service the needs of all of these different students.
Infante Green says she was waiting for the analysis before making decisions on closing school buildings that are in severe disrepair.
Will we be looking at buildings differently? Yes. Will some buildings have to close down? Most likely.
Yeah, because the new news is that the buildings don't seem to be getting any better. Dan.
That's right.
It's just not good. Welcome. Thanks for
having me. I used to work at Channel 12, by the way.
Oh,
I wanted to remind you.
Well, I just couldn't remember. I'm getting old. This is a confusing story.
Yeah.
Or should I not be confused?
No, I think you're right. I think this is a confusing story because it didn't go the way that I think, quite frankly, the administration or the commissioner kind of hoped it would go. I think what they really wanted was even if it was symbolic, here's a glaring a bucket of money that's being misspent, and we're coming in to save the day. Instead, what you get is a report that says things aren't as bad as they seem. You need to have, maybe better direction. But for the public, I know that's a little bit confusing, and it doesn't really give us a lot of answers to what does the takeover and the turnaround look like.
Things aren't as bad as it seems, meaning misappropriation of funds.
Right.
Meaning priorities in spending.
Mm-hmm.
Ernst & Young didn't do an analysis on educational performance.
That's right.
But how do you assign accurate priorities in spending without expertise in educational performance?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
Well, I don't think you do. I think you're right. I think you raised a very legitimate question to this. I think this was something that, again, I really do believe that the state hoped that there would be something glaring, so then you have a come save the day moment, right? Now you don't have that, and so absent that, we go right back to this conversation about how do we know that you're going to spend the money that appears to be being spent at least legally and in the right way to actually turn around these schools.
What expertise did Ernst & Young bring in this report to at least be able to identify small problems?
Yeah, so Ernst & Young, of course, is a very well-known and I think competent accounting firm. They've done this work specifically for other districts, most notably.
So they have some education acumen.
Yeah, the city of Los Angeles, in fact, they just went through the same.
They get the terms, they understand pipelines of federal money and state money and
Bingo.
city money and how they work and how they ought to be allocated. So they make judgments on categories of spending, right?
That's right.
But they don't make judgments on efficacy.
No. In fact, they actively sought to not have any sort of role in both recommendations, but also in, is that the right way to spend that bucket of money? They stayed away from that as long as they tried to get a stranglehold on where the money comes from, how it's spent, at least when they put it into buckets, but they didn't cast judgment, I guess, on the way the money is spent.
But the governor jumps in at first glance and says that more money is not the issue. Okay, that's certainly taxpayer palatable.
Right.
Is it accurate?
It's a really good question, and here's why. I think it is I think it's palatable to taxpayers for folks who you hear all the time whenever when the commissioner's been on this show or when you've had her on the radio. People immediately say, "What about my district? What about my community?" So this is a way to sort of make sure everybody feels okay on that front. But no, I mean the flip way to look at this is to say if everything's being spent mostly okay and those results are god awful, maybe they need more money. I think there will be people who actually view it that way. Certainly advocates, I think, in the city would say that. I think the mayor would say that, quite frankly.
Okay, so this conversation feels, by its nature, really ambiguous.
Yeah.
What was your specific takeaway from the report and the governor and the commissioner's response to it?
I thought the governor and the commissioners were...
It feels like a shoulder shrug from you, and you're not a shoulder shrug guy. So
yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what was the net takeaway and benefit of this report?
I'm not sure that there was one, and you're exactly right. Honestly, I think it makes some level of sense to bring in an outside firm to make sure that, remember, they announced this audit would happen or this financial review would happen just around the same time that we found out that the superintendent had spent a couple $100,000 on random books in the community, right? So it made some sense of, okay, let's get our our ducks in a row. Let's see what's happening. But the takeaway is, I mean, there's nothing in that report that if you have followed the city closely, by the way, if you're, despite what people say about the city council, they've actually done a pretty good job vetting this budget over the last couple of years to say, all right, here's what we're giving you. And they seem to have balanced budgets every year, out years being a little bit different. But yeah, I'm a little bit of a kind of a shoulder shrug person on this thing. I didn't think there was a major takeaway that said, boy, now we know what's next.
How does the commissioner assess that priorities are not in line when there is no real finding of misappropriation? I guess if you're a Providence historian of any kind of amateur or professional status, you would suggest that an audit like this would find bags of money in the wrong places, total misappropriations, some kind of corrupt type of incestuous spending scheme. So that stuff was not found.
Right.
Okay. It seems almost as if that's the bar of phew around here. And the commissioner suggests, and we'll come back, when we come back, we'll talk about it. She says, the spending's not aligned with priorities. Okay, so what are they? And how do you shovel the money to the priorities next?
We've been compared to districts and cities that have more poverty, and they're doing better than we are. I think when we talk about numbers, we forget that we're talking about kids. When I hear that only 10% of the kids are at grade level for math, That's the wrong message. What we need to hear and say is that 90% can't. I mean, really? Really? Those are kids.
So that was back in July, the new Ed Commissioner, Angelica Infante-Green. She will now start to get to a place where the question of really will be directed to her.
That's right.
Not quite yet.
Right.
Not quite yet. There's an expectation that along with this audit that they did and the formal takeover, which took a lengthy period of time and all of that, that she has a honeymoon period and a reorg period
That's
here.
right.
And she has not formally announced yet exactly how she's going to form the Providence team. You can see that she's building around Providence with some assistant commissioners, and let's not forget that she has total responsibility for the state, not just for the city of Providence. But I'm still a little perplexed as to what the specific, okay, here's what we learned about the money thing. She still kind of says, well, our spending is not aligned with our priorities, but without something glaring to sell to the legislature, and with the governor who continues to operate with leadership tin ear.
Right.
If I'm an advocate for improving the city of Providence, and the governor says, hey, look, I look at this thing, it's not a money problem. They are dead on arrival right now at the General Assembly for any requests for new funding if they find they need it.
Yeah, and again,
I mean, she literally blew the big toe off herself, the Ed Commissioner, and anybody else who may say, you know what, we have identified what we need to do, and we're going to need some more dough to do it.
No, I think you're exactly right. And what it does is, even if you get into this situation where maybe you realize, okay, you can do whatever you want to do under the same sort of level of funding or the same percentage increase that they seem to get every year, the smart political move here would have been to say, hey, we need a lot more, and then go in horse trade with the legislature and say, you know what, maybe there isn't money that we need, maybe we can do some policy changes, things like that.
I don't even know that you got to say we need a lot more, Dan. I think what you got to say is, that report was interesting. No misappropriation, corruption, or brown bag problems.
Right.
Other than that, when we assemble our complete game plan, we will start to assess price tags to it, and we'll be back to you as to whether we need more money.
That's right.
I mean, come on.
Well,
where is the thinking from the governor's people? It's almost as if they've just said to the commissioner, send us a memo every couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. It's
a big priority for a new year is education, but nobody skates on the surface better than this governor.
Right. Well, and I think what I would say is it's interesting because early on, I think you and I both agreed, I think the state, including the governor's office, were quite effective in allowing her to, go and do her sessions with the public and sort of rally support. And you're right, now this becomes a kind of a situation where,
she just rally support, set her off. I mean, look, I think we got a blue chip Ed Commissioner here. I think she's got a lot of the goods, but she's on a learning curve daily.
That's right.
On how to navigate rebuilding the system. Remember, she's an educator. Educators have difficult times understanding systems, organizational stuff, politics, state governments, all that kind of thing.
Especially that stuff, right? Because they're trained to think about what the systems that take place inside of school. They're very often they look at the politics of it and they say, well, why don't you think about the kids?
Right.
And the reality is politics are at play here in a bunch of different ways.
Right. So the governor is really he's done a really good job of squashing whatever might be. No, look, I'm not advocating to spend more taxpayer money. Whether you live in Providence, I do not. We're both going to pay for it because it's going to be state.
You more than me.
It's going to be state additional dollars on the whole situation. I'm not. I just. It seems as if they're a little bit of quicksand right now.
I would say there are a couple of things in the report that seem to lay some groundwork. For example,
what are they?
For one thing, is they talked. The report talks a lot about, or there's a page about how charter school funding is not exactly breaking the bank in Providence. I think there's a case that the state would say, hey, all these people in Providence, these city council members who complain so much about the charter schools, The evidence suggests they're actually not the problem. Maybe we can expand more.
Whereas they are a little bit of a challenge. Blackstone Valley Prep, by the way, I'm very bullish on the charter schools, but the formulas are off.
Oh, sure.
Everything is off-putting right now in terms of the formulas, and they're going to have to rearrange those formulas, and the response to fix that has been slow. But charter school pressure, look what the District of Cumberland has done in the last 5, 6, 7 years as the manifestation of charter school pressure,
right,
along with some other reforms and things that they're doing, and good leadership there. Look what it's done. It's made the city
They've
better.
passed Lincoln,
or the town
right?
better. Yes,
So,
which again should not be the marker, but because one of the things we keep talking about here is leading the league at the JV level is nothing to get excited
Right.
about. Barrington, East Greenwich ought to just keep their powder dry. Winning against the AAA league is not exactly what
you don't get a
want to
ring
done.
for that.
No, but governance and the da-da-da-done new program for the city of Providence, is it coming?
We're not seeing it yet, and this is another thing to the point that you made earlier about the company Ernst & Young not making real recommendations. And I tried to beat them down on this. I said, hey, is there something we're not seeing here? Did you make a series of recommendations? They say they did not. And this is a big question. The commissioner and lots of folks have complained very loudly about the city council and $5,000 contracts, and it takes such a long process. If I'm the city council and I look at this report, I would say, hey, we've done our job. And that is not necessarily true, and there's all kinds of politics at play there. But how can this report really make a legitimate case that the city council shouldn't have oversight over contracts? There's nothing that suggests that they shouldn't, other than maybe good policy, which is a conversation that you get in the weeds with.
I was in my dentist chair this morning. Everything's good. And my friend, the hygienist, who talks politics with me, unsolicited, says,
you get this in the gym, too.
Dan, where's the flossing? By the way, the city of Providence schools, boy, they're in trouble. What's going on with that? Impression continues to be that it's a real problem. That will be a problem for a long time, meaning impression. Mm-hmm. When do you think that might change?
Oh, I think it's going to be a really long time. I mean,
I say we'll debate that. The data might not change for a long time. Impressions can change quicker. We'll be back and talk about it. One of the things about change is that if you suggest change is happening or going to happen or is happening enough times, people will start to believe it. Now, if data undermines that, then you got problems.
Right.
But I think once the commissioner puts her real game plan in place, she's got a chance at changing the mindsets. So I think she's finding this is not the easiest thing in the world to do. That was your headline.
Yeah.
Running a district is no easy task. The data is going to take a long time.
The data is going to take a long time. Where I would push back against you is use a completely separate thing about the city of Providence. If you ask someone on your radio show if the city of Providence has crime going up or down, I think the majority of your callers, I think the majority of people who read me would say, well, at the very least, it stayed the same. Crime has fallen like this over the last 20 years in the city of Providence. There's a perception problem.
Bad marketing problem.
Very bad marketing problem.
That's what I'm talking about here.
But I think I think that the perception of the Providence schools being unfortunately a dumpster fire for many years, I think will remain intact until you see probably dramatic result improvements that are almost certainly not going to happen any time in the near future, because you're going from, if you have let's say you double the proficiency rate, that would be a huge success, but you'd be going from 10 to 20. We'd still be talking about 80% of the district not being proficient in math or English. So I think it makes it really hard. I think the bar is awfully high for this commissioner or whoever the next superintendent is or the next mayor, and I think they're going to continue to suffer from that perception problem long after maybe the reforms are implemented.
Well, it's a guy who studies the marketing aspects of a lot of the messaging aspects of a lot of this stuff. It seems to me that you battle that by telling good stories.
That's true.
And
but here's where
and even despite the dumpster fire, there are heroes in education
100%.
in that city. There are kids who are excelling. There are kids who are beating the odds.
Absolutely.
there are all sorts of things. I mean, the heroic story right now for the city of Providence is the random teacher that puts buckets in the classroom, you know, in order to save her kids from the mildew that comes from dripping roofs. That's not the success story that you want to be talking about. Although that teacher deserves a world of credit for staying in there.
And a raise.
And well, that's a whole other thing. By the way, how is she doing with that and with the union negotiation? Are we going to get some kind of an appeal that runs to the Supreme Court that actually nullifies X number of things that the commissioner is going to try to do here?
Well, I've covered, maybe 3 or 4 teachers' contract conversations over the course of the last decade, let's say. Every year, with a year to go in the contract, everybody says, we're really looking forward to coming together and having conversations. It's the same conversation that we've heard from Commissioner Infante Green and Mary Beth Calabro. We have not seen very much productivity. We're now going to be we're going into Christmas and the New Year, so we're probably not going to get anything significant until 2020. Then the clock is ticking, right? Then we're talking about the end of the school year for a new contract. I'm doubtful that
contract expires.
I believe June 30th.
Of
I
next
believe
year.
that's what it is. Yeah, of 2020.
Of 2020.
End of the school year.
Yeah.
So I think it's
Well, the impression was in the state takeover of the city schools that they could wipe the contract out and start from scratch.
Yeah, they love to say that, didn't they? I'm not so totally sold that that's the ability. I think you have said that all along. I think that they can do certain things, but I think they'd much rather figure it out through negotiation, just like all things, like pension reform, like we've talked about. And that's not going to be easy. It's hard to ask for folks to do more.
And the challenge of marketing a state takeover and creating some kind of a bellwether moment is to have some kind of substantial foundational change. And most people, if you ask, why don't you think the schools will improve? Oh, the unions. And that may or may not be accurate. Depends on the circumstance in which you're actually arguing on any particular moment. But if there's a slow meld or some kind of just ticky-tack change to the way the parties are doing business, again, that's not a good marketing message for the state. So she's between a rock and a hard place there. You know, be careful what you ask for when you take over a system.
That's right. And if you talk to Commissioner Ken Wagner, the former commissioner, or the former superintendent, what they would all say is, yes, there are incremental things that we can do. You could have a better aligned curriculum. There are a bunch of little things you can do that in the end may result in good things, but it's not necessarily the dramatic improvement that they probably need. And so we're still waiting to see that.
All right. It's a as-go, stay tuned conversation, no doubt. Dan, happy holidays. Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Final word on Waking Back. If you're seeing the show on the original air date, we'll be taking a look at the city of Warwick tomorrow. A firefighter contract that has a lot more than meets the eye in it controversy-wise. And it's going to highlight for us a bunch of state law, culture, statute that really, boy, while it may all be legal, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't know if it will end up being a thing that catches fire, so to speak, across the state, but something we got to pay a lot of attention to. So we'll see you tomorrow night and on the radio at 3 until 6 on WPRL. Thanks for tuning in. Good night.